In Morocco right now, there are stadiums being built that cost $5 billion. And just a few miles from one of those stadiums, a hospital hasn't been renovated since 1967. 8 women died there last year during routine C-sections. And when Moroccan youth took to the streets chanting, "We want hospitals, not stadiums," the government arrested over 2,400 of them. That is what FIFA calls a success story. I'm going to show you why the 2030 World Cup is shaping up to be one of the most chaotic, expensive, and frankly embarrassing sporting events in history, and why almost nobody is talking about how bad this is going to get. Let me just start with the basics, because when I tell you what they're doing, you're going to think I'm joking. The 2030 World Cup is going to be held across 6 countries, on 3 continents at the same time: Spain, Portugal, Morocco, Argentina, Uruguay, Paraguay. That's not a World Cup, that's a geographical crisis. Here's how it's supposed to work. The tournament opens with 3 ceremonial matches in South America to celebrate the 100th anniversary of the first ever World Cup, which was held in Uruguay in 1930. Romantic idea, right? Then it immediately jumps over to Morocco, Spain, and Portugal for the other 101 games. 6 countries, 3 continents, 48 teams. And FIFA somehow looked at all of this and said, yes, this is fine. Now, you might be asking, why? Why would anyone agree to this? What are they thinking? And the answer to that question is the first reason this is going to be a disaster. FIFA didn't actually pick 6 countries because they genuinely believed it was a great football idea. They did it because they needed to clear the runway for Saudi Arabia to host in 2034, and this was the most elegant way to do it. Here's the mechanism. FIFA has a rotation system. Countries from confederations that hosted the previous 2 World Cups can't bid for the next one. Qatar hosted 2022. The US, Canada, and Mexico host 2026. Both are in their respective Asian and North American confederations, so that blocks out most of Asia and North America from 2030. Fine. But the 2034 host, FIFA needed that to be Saudi Arabia. Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman had been cultivating a close personal relationship with FIFA President Gianni Infantino. Saudi Arabia was going to host. The only question was how to engineer it. Solution? Give the 2030 tournament to CONMEBOL countries, South America, as a fake centenary gift. That means South American countries can't bid for 2034 either. And UEFA countries are in the 2030 mix. That leaves 2034 open only for Asia and Oceania. Saudi Arabia was the only country that bid. They announced their bid hours after the 2030 decision was made. Human Rights Watch called it out immediately, saying FIFA had failed to learn the lesson of 2022 Qatar and had awarded the tournament without transparency or human rights due diligence. The entire architecture of the 2030 World Cup was built, in part, to manufacture a situation where the most controversial, authoritarian-run bid in history would run unopposed. And FIFA pulled it off in broad daylight. Okay, let's talk about the planet. At the 2022 Qatar World Cup, transport alone accounted for 2.1 tons of CO2. That's more than the entire carbon footprint of the 2024 Paris Olympics. That was one country, a tiny one. Now imagine that same tournament, but you're flying teams and fans between 3 continents. A professor at the University of Limoges called it an ecological aberration. Carbon Market Watch called it an unfortunate geographic choice. A researcher at the University of Lausanne said, and I love this, it is a crazy idea in terms of the impact this choice will have on the planet.
These aren't activists chaining themselves to goalposts. These are academics and climate economists. FIFA's response? They pointed out that only 3 of the 104 games will be in South America. The other 101 are in neighboring Morocco, Spain, and Portugal, which have close geographic proximity. Which is technically true, but it ignores the fact that supporters following their national teams will still need to get from their own countries to those venues. A Brazilian fan following Brazil isn't hopping a train from Lisbon. A Japanese fan isn't commuting from Madrid. And there's another climate problem nobody's really talking about: heat. Spain, Portugal, and Morocco have already seen temperatures exceed 100 degrees Fahrenheit in April. In summer, when the tournament is traditionally held, researchers have said that none of the host cities will be safe for this kind of event by 2088. Wildfire season on the Iberian Peninsula runs in June and July, which is exactly when the World Cup happens. It is genuinely possible that in 2030, a match gets postponed or canceled because the air quality in Spain is too dangerous to play in. Now, let me take you back to Morocco, because what's happening there right now is the most underreported story in football. Morocco is planning to spend $16 billion on World Cup infrastructure. They're building 7 new stadiums and renovating 7 others. They're building the Grand Stade Hassan II in Casablanca, which will seat 115,000 people, and has been described as being designed and built specifically for the 2030 final. While that stadium was going up, Morocco had 7.7 medical professionals for every 10,000 citizens. Youth unemployment hit 37% in 2025. The minimum wage was around $300 a month. More than half of Moroccans under 35 said they'd considered emigrating. And then in September 2025, 8 women died from botched C-sections in a public hospital in Agadir. The hospital hadn't been properly resourced in decades. The slogan that went viral overnight was devastating in its simplicity: 5-star stadiums, 1-star hospitals. Within days, a leaderless youth movement called Gen Z 212, named after Morocco's international dialing code, organized on Discord. The server went from 3,000 to over 188,000 members in weeks. They took to the streets in over 20 cities chanting, "The youth don't want the World Cup. Health. Education." The government's response? More than 2,400 arrests, including dozens of children. A police vehicle was caught on camera deliberately swerving onto a sidewalk and striking a 19-year-old student who had to have his leg amputated. 3 protesters were killed. This is the human cost of a country spending billions to host a football tournament while its own people are dying in hospitals that haven't been renovated since 1967, and the World Cup isn't even here yet. Now, even if you set aside the political and humanitarian issues, which, for the record, you shouldn't, there are practical logistical problems with this tournament that would embarrass a university intramurals organizer. Nobody can agree on where the final is going to be. Morocco wanted it in Casablanca at the 115,000-seat Hassan II. Spain wanted it at the Bernabeu, or Camp Nou. The Spanish Federation president said it would be impossible to explain if Spain didn't host a final, given that Spain carries 55% of the whole co-hosting arrangement. Then, Morocco's federation president went on Moroccan TV and said reports that Florentino Perez had already secured the Bernabeu were just speculative media. He said no decision had been made. FIFA's own 2024 evaluation had actually listed Hassan II as the leading candidate for the final, given its size. Then, after the chaotic scenes at the 2025 Africa Cup of Nations final, which Morocco was hosting, Spain used the moment to push its case, and the Spanish Federation confirmed Spain would be hosting the final. 3 host countries, they couldn't agree on where to put the most important match in world football. On top of that, a host city quit. San Sebastian residents actually wrote to FIFA asking to be removed because of over-tourism concerns. Then, Malaga officially withdrew over stadium renovation logistics. Cities are trying to escape the World Cup before it even starts. And the human rights commitments FIFA demanded from bidding countries? Human Rights Watch documented that FIFA requires hosts to formally commit to respecting international human rights and labor standards. They wrote to FIFA asking for evidence of due diligence on all 6 nations. FIFA never responded. Now, let me take you to you, the actual football fan who just wants to watch the World Cup. If your team makes the knockout stages, you might be following them from South America to Morocco to Spain over a few weeks. 3 different continents. Different visa requirements, wildly different costs of living, different currencies, languages, infrastructure. This isn't the World Cup experience. This is a gap year. Ticket prices will be historic. Hotels near host cities are already pricing on the assumption that demand will dwarf supply. And that's before you factor in the cost of intercontinental flights. The truth is, this World Cup is going to be deeply inaccessible for ordinary fans from smaller footballing nations. If you're from Senegal or Ecuador or South Korea, following your national team to three potential venues on three continents isn't a trip. It's a financial decision that most people simply cannot make. FIFA talks about growing the game globally, but what they've actually built is a tournament that financially excludes the fans of most of the countries actually playing in it.
Look, I want to be clear about something. Football is magic. The World Cup at its best is genuinely one of the most beautiful things in sport. I'm not here to say none of it matters. But what FIFA has done with 2030 is use that love. The love that makes a Moroccan family scrape together money for a stadium ticket. The love that makes a kid in Casablanca dream of playing at the World Cup. And they've turned it into a financial and political instrument. They've used it to clear a path for Saudi Arabia. They've used it to give Morocco a prestige project that its own government is spending $16 billion on, while young people die in hospitals and get arrested for asking why. They've built the most logistically complex tournament in history and set it in regions that are getting increasingly dangerous for outdoor summer sport due to climate change. And when people in Morocco chant, "We don't want the World Cup," FIFA and the Moroccan government don't hear a population in pain. They see a PR problem to manage. In 2030, the cameras will be on the pitch. They'll show the goals, the tears, the celebrations. They'll show the beautiful stadiums and the spectacular crowds. They won't show the 2,400 people who were arrested for asking for a hospital. So yes, the football might be brilliant. It usually is. But the World Cup 2030 isn't just a football tournament anymore. It's a test of whether we're willing to look away. And based on what I've seen from FIFA so far, they're counting on us to.